as you can tell, I'm going to talk about ECW's Hardcore Justice. The ECW TNA pay-per-view that's not an ECW TNA pay-per-view that is a TNA ECW pay-per-view. So, let's talk about this pay-per-view. Before I get really into everything that I hate about this pay-per-view, let me say some good things about it. I think this pay-per-view will make TNA a lot of money. I will say that right off the bat because they're not going to pay these guys probably. I mean, if Abyss and Foley, and I know Foley's on the pay-per-view, I don't know if Abyss is, but if Abyss and Foley are on there, those are the two, maybe those will be the two highest paid guys on this entire pay-per-view. They will probably get paid more than everybody else on this pay-per-view put together. Which normally would not be the case for TNA pay-per-view. They're not doing it. They didn't go to Philly, or New York, which they probably should have, but we'll get to that in a minute. And they're doing it in the Impact Zone. They'll save money there. This should probably, will probably, as a pay-per-view, it's probably less overhead than most of their pay-per-views. And in all honesty, with all of the kind of the attention this has gotten and kind of, people talking about it that I've seen, I wouldn't be surprised if this did what their pay-per-views when we thought that they weren't doing very good were doing, and we were like, they need to do better, which is about, maybe about 25,000 buys. But on this pay-per-view, that'll be good, and it'll probably make them a lot of money, and I wouldn't be surprised if it makes them more money than any pay-per-view, has in probably a couple years. Just me throwing that out there. Wouldn't surprise me. If it didn't, it wouldn't surprise me either, but I'm just saying. So, let me say that. And honestly, I don't have necessarily a problem with them doing the pay-per-view per se, because I have nothing wrong with these guys getting an extra payday. Nothing at all. I don't begrudge them of that, so I don't want it to come off like that. I don't want it to sound like... I do have a problem with when they've done it. And let me start off with that. I don't understand why they're doing this at Hard Justice and not waiting for the next pay-per-view when you could have done this pay-per-view then had a 2-month build to Bound for Glory, and that would have made more sense. And also, here's the other thing. By the looks of it, we're not going to have Tajiri, we're not going to have Tanaka, and we're not going to have Super Crazy. If you would have maybe done this a month later, I don't know, but I would imagine it wouldn't shock me if you had a better chance of getting those three guys, and maybe you can maybe get Paul Heyman to show up as well. Maybe Paul Heyman shows up on this pay-per-view anyways. I don't know. I seriously doubt that, but maybe you have a better chance. But instead, you've hot-shotted this deal, and now you're scrambling around trying to get these guys, and basically we're not going to get One Night Stand. We're not going to get One Night Stand 2. We're not going to get Hardcore Homecoming. We're not going to get Hardcore Homecoming 2. We're going to get the ECW thing from last year, which was Legends of the Arena, which I have not seen, so I will not judge myself, but from what I've heard, for a nostalgia show, it's pretty good. For a wrestling show, it's okay. Maybe good, because of the atmosphere and all of that. But as a nostalgia show, it was said to be, very good to, very good. Not great, but, there you go. This show is not going to be One Night Stand, okay, which was a great show. This show is not going to be One Night Stand 2, which, even though I've always said I always felt that was the better wrestling show, it definitely wasn't the show that felt more like ECW, because I think the first One Night Stand felt more like ECW, but I think the second One Night Stand was a better wrestling show. Okay? I don't think this will be as good as either of the Hardcore Homecomings, and I know most of you have seen it. And keep in mind that Hardcore Homecoming 2, that most of you have probably seen, doesn't even include the real main event, which was edited off of the DVD when they released it commercially. I don't think it'll be that. I don't think that either of those will be that good. Reason being is this: everyone that was on those shows, the ECW, One Night Stand, One Night Stand 2, and both Hardcore Homecomings, that was 4 years ago. Every guy is 4 years older. Every guy is, and not in a good way. And basically, any of the talent that maybe could have been on this show and maybe put on a good match, good to great match, is not on this show. You don't have Tajiri, you don't have Tanaka, You don't have Super Crazy. If you had Tajiri and Tanaka, both of those guys on this show, I would order it. I will not. I will sit here right here and say I would order that show without question, because those are two guys I think TNA should have been using forever, anyways. I'm not going to get Carino. Carino is a guy that could still go. That I would actually probably want to see. We might see Kid Cash, I guess. I don't know. They haven't really announced everybody. I'm trying to think of somebody else that could maybe go. Maybe Just Incredible. There's not a lot of guys out there that you would actually say, you know, would be really good. And that's my problem with this pay-per-view, is that if they're going to do one last, you know, hurrah, I want it to be good. I want it to be great. I don't want it to be, you know, a bunch of old guys going out there and putting on Heroes of Wrestling, you know, hardcore style. That's what I'm kind of scared we're going to get. And and I don't want that. I don't want that at all. I don't think any ECW fan wants that, and I'm scared to death that's what we're going to get. And on top of that, you know, and I really wasn't even going to come on here and talk about this, and then Brandon Instant Classic, if you saw Honor Hammer's review, you heard him say to me that, you know, he got to go to an arena show before me, and I had been watching ECW before he stopped watching Power Rangers. Of course, I don't think he's ever stopped watching Power Rangers. Just kidding. Not really. And that's true. And that's why this kind of just irks me. Not only that, but, you know, that promo that Tommy gave. Not that what he said wasn't true, but that was just such bullshit. You know, to sit there and just go off about Vince McMahon and talk about, you know, how, you know, his friends were fired. Yes, your friends were fired. And your friends were fired. Why? Because after the ECW fans, okay, nuked, because I can't even call shit on, nuked Big Show versus Batista, a match that Vince McMahon knew he could put on Raw and would probably do pretty well as far as crowd, but he stuck it in front of that crowd, and that crowd just nuked the hell out of it. He knew, you know what, I don't need to do these fans. These fans are more problems than they're worth, and I don't need this, and so he packed up his bag, stopped doing the Manhattan Center, took the show on the road, and totally rearranged ECW, and it went in an entirely different direction and was not the same since. Even though I thought it was still, you know, okay. Even, you know, I thought people went a little crazy with it being called ECW, but guess what? Vince McMahon owns it, and if Vince McMahon owns it, he can do whatever the hell he wants to with it. And if it wasn't for Vince McMahon, ECW would have gone out of business long before it did. And Vince McMahon actually was almost brought it back before. He was going to actually... Paul Heyman talked about this. Back in, like, it was 2000 or 2001, I guess. The idea was that Vince was going to put money into ECW as kind of a developmental deal, was going to keep it going, was going to give it to Shane. Shane was going to run it business-wise, and I've talked about this before. And Paul was going to do that. And that was back in 2000. That wasn't when, you know, the ECW started back up, and that was originally going to be the idea, was that they were just going to, there's going to be an internet show, and then Vince decided, no, let's put it actually on television, and it kind of went from there. You know, didn't talk about that. Didn't talk about the fact that, you know what, your buddies who got fired for the time they were in the WWE probably made more money for a gig than they've ever made. You know, Vince McMahon didn't have to hire those guys. Vince McMahon didn't have to hire Balls. He didn't. He hired. I mean, everyone was shocked. Wow, he actually hired Balls Mahoney, and Sandman, and all of these other guys. You know, ECW failed the second time because the fans that were there, like I said, you had the whole, you know, Rob Van Dam, Sabu getting caught with pot, and Rob Van Dam has said, hey, I screwed up. You know, you can think what you want to. Pot should be legal, shouldn't be legal, but he says, hey, I screwed up. You had a whole host of things happen. And I understand him wanting to come on here and play the, you know, everybody hate Vince McMahon card. Here's the problem. Most of the people that hate Vince McMahon now, most of those WCW diehards that, you know, didn't come over when the Monday Night Wars ended, are now UFC fans and aren't watching TNA and aren't probably going to order a TNA pay-per-view with ECW guys on it. They're just not going to do it. And that's what irks me about that whole thing. And then for him to compare, you know, ECW to TNA, which I agree there are some similarities, but come the hell on. He talked about, Ric Flair beating Ric Flair, doing for Jay Lethal what Terry Funk did for him. Well, the difference is that then, whatever. It doesn't matter because then he pretty much beats Jay Lethal, and Jay Lethal was made to look stupid. Jay Lethal jobbed at the next Impact after he beat Ric Flair. I mean, you don't have a guy beat Ric Flair. You have a guy beat Ric Flair to elevate him, and that's not what happened. And all these other things that I could just go off about TNA. But the point of the matter is, I am not excited about this. I'm actually kind of, probably should be even madder about this than I am. But I'm very indifferent about it. It kind of pisses me off because I think this was very sorely thought out by TNA. I think that TNA could have gone to Manhattan Center. I think they could have gone to the ECW arena as well and put on a pay-per-view, even though it'd be hot as shit. But hey, it would be what it was. Or anywhere else, and charged, $50 a ticket minimum, and the place probably would have sold out. I have no doubt about that. I mean, that's one of the things about One Night Stand 1 and One Night Stand 2, is people forget that those tickets were not cheap. Those were for WWE tickets. Those were expensive tickets, and they sold out. And I think both shows sold out in less than a minute, or something crazy like that. There's just so much about this that just is like, if you were gonna do this, why wouldn't you think this out more? And also, Tommy's gonna freaking book it, which the last thing Tommy booked was not great. That's all I'm gonna say. And maybe if it's Tommy and Raven, I have faith in Raven. I don't have faith in Tommy. Maybe Tommy can pick up the phone and talk to Gabe, and maybe Gabe can, come up with some stuff too. To me, if those three guys were booking it, I'd have faith in this, and I think it might actually be good. I still don't think it would be great, but I think it would be good. But I just, and the fact of the matter is that all of those shows, all of those, those reunion shows, the original ECW, original One Night Stand, you had that moment when the show started and out walked Joey, and the fans go crazy, and Joey almost lost it. And then you had the, Heyman promo, which was awesome. You had the, when the WWE guys showed up and went into the balcony, and that was awesome. You had all of the, you had all of that, which you're not going to have on this show. You had the, kind of the same stuff happen on the second One Night Stand. You had the fan interaction and that sort of stuff happen at both Hardcore Homecoming, because they were in the ECW arena, and that within itself was special. We're not going to have any of that special stuff on this pay-per-view, I feel. And that's one of the things that really upsets me, is because this needs to be special, and I don't think we're going to have anything special. Yes, and by the looks of it, we're going to go into the pay-per-view with maybe 2 matches announced. RVD and Jerry Lynn, which should be good to great. And then Raven and Tommy Dreamer one last time. They may be able to pull something out of their ass, and it might be good. But you need more than that. You need more for people to buy a pay-per-view than that. I mean, both of the one-night stands, people knew what was going to happen. People knew we were going to get Tanaka and Awesome. People knew we were going to get Jericho and Lance Storm. People knew we were going to get all of this stuff. And there's no guarantees. We don't know what we're getting on this pay-per-view. I know it's 2 weeks away, but, at some point you got to start hyping the pay-per-view, and at some point you have to start getting it going, because, everybody on the internet pretty much knew there was going to be a one-night stand. And they knew it, I believe, right before No Way Out that year. And then tickets were sold right after WrestleMania, and then a good month before the pay-per-view, they started, we started seeing the commercials, they started saying who was going to be on the pay-per-view, they started saying some of the matches we were going to see, and it was all of that sort of stuff, and they had this really good build-up. The second one-night stand, we had even, second one-night stand, we knew, because they built it up as a traditional WWE pay-per-view, and so we knew who was going to be on it. We knew what was going to be on it. We knew the matches that were going to take place. And so, and you have to have that. If you don't have that, well, guess what? You get December to Dismember, which, was complete horrid buy rate, mainly because it was ECW pay-per-view that was badly built up, and then the fact that there was we had an elimination chamber and the tag match. I think was the only thing that we really knew was going to be on that show, and it sucked ass. And I'm hoping to God that's not what we get. I don't think that's what we're going to get, but you know, who knows? I just don't want to see this pay-per-view. I don't want to see this pay-per-view happen for that reason, because I do think it wasn't thought out as well as it should have been. And like I said, there's guys on that aren't going to be on this show. You know, we're not going to get Lance Storm because Lance Storm, you know, has principles. Apparently, we're not going to have Steve Corino, which, you know, they could have used Steve Corino. We're not going to, you know, you're not going to have like I said, Tajiri, Tanaka, or Super Crazy. You could have used all three of those guys. There's enough guys that are ECW alums that you could put on this show, and it still looked like, wow, that was an awesome show. And that's, you know, let them go out the way they wanted to go out with, and still be able to put on, you know, a great show. And that's what I want to see. I think that's what most ECW fans want to see. And I probably rambled far, far too long, but I didn't want to come on here and just kind of ramble about this because it does just kind of, you know, ECW had that. Be it true or not true, the fans always played a really big part of it, and I just don't feel like this show, where I think the other 4 shows, and even the one last year, the Legends of the Arena, had something to do with the fans. If you do it in the Impact Zone, what's that have to do with ECW fans? I mean, really. I mean, I don't want to see ECW. I don't want to see ECW guys in front of Impact Zone folks that chant, "This is awesome," you know, 30 seconds into a match that's not awesome yet. Or chant, you know, match of the year when it's definitely not a match of the year. And that sort of garbage. I mean, sometimes they come up with good stuff, but a lot of times it's just like, shut up. Just shut up. Just stop trying to be indie, because you're not that smart. And anyways, I rambled long enough. I'm out. Have a good one. Later.